Welcome back, everyone, to Random's Thoughts. We're here today with another Phobies news flash because if you look below me, there's actually a lot of stuff that's gone on, even though the list looks a little short. So let's jump into it. Quick aside, everybody, before we get into the actual content, I was accepted into the Phobies Content Affiliate Program, the content creator program, you might call it. Shout out to the Phobies team, and thank you for that. But the reason I'm telling you, everybody out there, dear viewer, dear listener, is to let everybody know that I do receive some compensation from the Phobies team as a result of being part of that program. Now, I loved Phobies before, and I still love Phobies now, and I expect I will still continue to love Phobies in the future. So look forward to more Phobies content coming from Random's Thoughts. So now, on with the show. Now, first thing, before we jump into the actual topics, there isn't really much to say on this one, but I probably should have put it in the agenda down there anyway. Forgive me. Bottom line is that there were a number of patches to correct a variety of different bugs. By the time that you're seeing this video, you probably already were forced to update it, although there's an indication in the announcement in the official Phobies Discord that you may have to manually update on some of the mobile platforms. It looks like Steam kind of forces it. So this is to address some game crashes and desyncs, other stuff like that, that people may have encountered. So definitely thumbs up, Phobies team, getting that stuff squared away. Now, let's get on to... Should we start from the bottom, chat? I think we're going to start from the bottom. We're going to start and get the easy topic out of the way. Get a little anticipation going for the clearly much larger discussion that's about to happen. And I'm sure chat, because we're doing this live over on RTChompDG on Twitch, if you want to hit up the live stream, or check out some Phobies action, other games too. It's fun, I'm told. And I'm also apparently very fun to fall asleep to. That seems to happen a lot. But anyway, we get a new map rotation, notably. And this kind of bleeds into what I want to talk about with the balance patch. Notably, we only get a single one of the new maps. So we already got Phobos. We now get Pluto. But we have, I think it was 5 maps total. I kind of expected that we were going to get 2 of the new maps rotating in. Although this wasn't an unlikely scenario, that we get Mysomania, who's a recurring map, and then Pluto in the new map. Is there anything we can glean from this? Well, I think that the Phobies team obviously wants to stretch out a little bit of the content, keep some of the anticipation going, so that people will, they keep coming back to check in for new stuff instead of getting a glut of it, and then we end up, a few weeks from now, or a couple weeks from now, we're out of new maps, and then it's back to the old grind again. Now it'll extend the rotation. I wonder what I'd have to go back and look, and I didn't do this before the stream. I don't know if anybody in chat has. I don't think we've gotten enough rotations yet to see. We've gotten things come back in, but do they come back in together? Like, is always the same 2 maps leaving and the same 2 maps coming back in? I'm not sure. I don't believe that to be the case, but I'm not 100% positive. Either way, we're only going to be getting one of the new maps for now, so I am excited to try it out, because I haven't actually played on this map, and I don't know if anybody in chat has or not. Chat's saying that they're more happy that that Ergo is gone, which I didn't mind Ergo too much. It's fine. I think I'm fine to see it rotate out simply because we played it a lot. Played it before, rotated out, it came back in, played it some more. All right, let's get some fresh maps in there. And then Mysomania made for Rushing Hearts. Is it, though? Is it, though? As much as Ergo makes me tilt, I find an interesting map every time. Yeah, is it? I don't know. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of standardized stuff on Ergo for the most part. It's basically the same play patterns over and over again, which isn't bad. But it can definitely be influenced more so when you fall into that rut by phobia levels and stress levels in general. I'm happy Xylo is gone. I know a lot of people didn't like Xylo. I actually like Xylo more than the other one that uses the same tile set. I think Xylo's pretty good. I kind of like it. It has somewhat devolved in recent times, so again, I'm kind of happy that it's leaving because we're seeing this play pattern over and over. It's kind of devolved into Spider Wars, and if your opponent has more pulls than you, or you have more pulls than your opponent, that kind of, forces one player's hand. because you can either chain pull, you can threaten both sides, both the top and the bottom, really. It's kind of obnoxious. I always kill all phobies on Myso and myself, ironically. I don't really remember. There were heart rush attempts, or heart push attempts, not necessarily rush. I don't know that I would say it's really built for rushing it down. I don't know. Thing with Xylo is collection disparities control the outcome. What you were just saying. Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest thing for me, is that it feels like it's not even necessarily just the pulls. Like if you have boops, say you have Repeller now, Rambo becomes God tier in Xylo. Honestly, I don't like Rambo on Xylo much anymore. I don't remember the last time I got it or saw it from an opposing side. The reason being is that once you get booped once by a Rambo, you never get booped by it again. Like, it basically never happens. The only time that you will is if somebody sets up a weird Gravedigger / Mount Crushmore play where, like, oh, they break a block and they swing from a different side and then they boop and do this other thing, and, like, that takes way more of an involved setup. Not saying it's impossible, but it's just less likely for that to actually occur. So, I don't know. I'm fine with this rotation. I don't see any particular issues with it. I know a lot of people are happy to see these maps go. I'm very excited to see where Pluto goes, especially because I'm not really a fan of Phobos right now. We'll be with Phobos, or Phobos will be with us for a while because of the rotation, but hopefully Pluto turns out better, because my initial impression of Phobos is not great. It's actually kind of hard playing Ramblin' and Xylo. You need some Phobia supporter action. Yeah, well, I mean, that's going to be the case for a lot of maps. With Rambo, I'm talking about, that is. So, we'll move on from map rotation, because, you know, it's pretty self-explanatory. Let's talk about some balance changes, chat. Let's talk about some balance changes. So this is actually a screenshot from my Discord, because a few different people, shout out to Claus and everybody else that was sending me screenshots, because I don't have some of these phobies, or I have them, or I have them and they're leveled, so I don't have them at level 1 is what I was trying to say. So we got a number of changes. The biggest one at the top is the one that everybody's going to want to talk about, so we're going to do that one last. Build the anticipation, like I said. So, starting from the bottom, Alastor was 400 damage. Now, these, again, level 1 stats. I think that, and this is a more general thing, it is virtually impossible to talk about balance and phobies. The reason being is because of the leveling system, which is, as mentioned on many occasions before, infuriating. I don't like the leveling system. I wish there was a tournament mode, whatever. The problem is that you just can't necessarily say, oh, well, Alastor losing 20 damage at level 1 now equates to X amount of damage at level 12. Because you may see a level 17 Alastor. You may see a level 4 Alastor. And it really is going to depend on the relationship in that particular game about this phobie versus that phobie. As we've seen, the obvious examples of Jars getting sniped by Snowballs, getting sniped by Murder Wings, getting sniped by Eternal Knights. Each of those have different breakpoints for hitting Jars. Point being, bringing it back to Alastor, is that people are complaining about Alastor. I think this is reasonable. Honestly, I would rather have seen probably a health decrease so that the cap is lower. I think that would have been better, but it is what it is. I think if something was going to be done, at least they did something. I found Alastor to be super obnoxious, but not necessarily to the point where something more extreme than this was necessary. I'm comfortable with this, trying it out. And this is, if you've been around either my channel, whether it's on Twitch, by the way, come by the live stream, RTChompGG over on Twitch, or if you've seen the YouTube videos, for any of the games, I like to trust the developers. It's their game. It's how they want it to go. Full stop. But beyond that, from a balance perspective, they just have way more information than any player could possibly have. It is not reasonable for an individual player, unless, they're fabulously wealthy and are doing nothing but crunching numbers on Phobies games all day and going through the UI and figuring it out for them to really figure out actual win rates or anything like that, especially given the level disparities. It's just not a realistic thing. Yes, can players talk about balance and be knowledgeable about it? Of course, but the devs are naturally going to have more information, right? And that extra knowledge is going to lead into more informed decisions, on top of the fact that they have other priorities. So that's why, give them the benefit of the doubt. You should, in general. If you disagree with things, that's perfectly fine. But just throwing it out there, like, let's be civil about things. It's not, this isn't the most important thing in the world right now. We'll put it that way. But, finishing up with Alastor, sure. Thumbs up. We'll go with this one. Next one up is Scritch. Scritch also got a damage reduction. This one is by a little bit more. Instead of 20 points like Alastor, it is 25 damage points, going from 475 to 450. Sure, I always kind of felt that Scritch was a little weird that it seemed to have such a high damage output, given that its ability was there. So not only was it able to move into, like, it's not a Gonzo Bonzo that's restricted by movement where you have to, like, kind of escort this thing into the fight. You can instead just, Scritch is super mobile, get all over the place, and then on top of it, potentially represent a threat. This seems fine. It's a little weird in general, though. I honestly haven't seen that much Scritch, full stop. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube or chat. Let me know in Twitch chat. Shocker. If you've been seeing a lot of Scritch prior to the balance patch and you were concerned about the damage, because it just feels like this one kind of came out of left field to a degree. I have to imagine that they are tracking an enormous amount of stats, and maybe it was just Scritch was killing way more Phobies than they thought it should, sort of thing. The real thing is, I expect, and we were talking about this offline, that there has to be an algorithm that basically craps out the numbers for, given that it costs this much and you want it with this move and this much health, this is where the damage should be, or the abilities then change it. You know, like, picture a giant spreadsheet, and then as you enter things in different fields, it changes the core values of HP and damage. Because we've seen that with, if it's a true range thing with flying, or it's mechanical phobia, or it's this, or it's that, it impacts whether it does more damage, less damage, it's movement, it's whatever. And that's why we get some of these numbers. So I don't know. Scritch is kind of a head scratcher for me. I haven't seen Scritch at all in my games. I rarely see Scritch doing damage, though. Yeah, I think it's fine, but maybe a little stabby nerf would have been better. We'll get there. Once we do all the actual ones, we'll talk about things that were, I don't want to say missed, but, you know, maybe missed. So next one up is pour one out for Luffy, everybody. Rocketman goes from 475 to 450. Again, I don't know where this came from, because what's funny is just about every time I saw Rocketman was someone complaining that it needed a buff and then Luffy having to defend it, or somebody, you know, stepping in and say, no, well, I've seen so-and-so do great things with it. I'm curious where Rocketman came from. Devs keep track of the damage output, and it's compared to fixed numbers. They partially decided they probably saw some phobias way higher damage output than predicted. Have they said that they tracked it? I know, we'll get back to Rocketman in a second. Did they actually state that they track the damage output? Because it's possible to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they do. And I could see for Rocketman, because the joke is always with Luffy pouring out a Rocketman, freezing their big thing, and then going heart with it. 475 at base level 1 is a lot of damage. This is clearly a break point, and honestly, one of the things that I didn't calculate it out. It's not just phobia versus phobia fighting. It's also phobia on heart. And what is the relationship between, okay, you have and these are the scenarios that get real complicated for the devs. Say there's a 2-to-1 panic point advantage for the Rocketman player. They freeze your best phobia. Now they're going to dive heart. How fast on insert map can they burn down your heart? Obviously, it gets real weird, because, like, well, what if other things collapse on it? What if there's still keys left? What if this? What if that? But there's clearly certain scenarios that the devs have in mind, and that's why it's cool looking at the balance patches to try and figure out, like, what is it that the devs are worried about? I have to imagine that both Rocketman and Scritch are more for, well, Rocketman probably more for heart, Scritch maybe for fighting phobies, but I haven't seen it too much. I lost a game already because a Murder Wing lived on 25 health. Oh, no. That's a big womp womp. I love that womp womp is now a thing. If you want to figure out that inside joke, come by the live stream. I know I already mentioned it already, but we're doing it again. Links in the description. But anyway, I don't know. Honestly, I saw way more stuff from the community about Rocketman being bad. Now, I do not agree with the community on the vast majority of things in virtually every game, because most people, myself included, don't know what the hell they're doing. So people say things, and there's so many variables here, as mentioned, that is my Rocketman level 17 and their stuff is level 4. Okay, well, yeah, of course I'm going to crap all over them. Like, what do you expect? It's very difficult. I'm going to trust the devs on this one. I didn't see a lot of Rocketman. I expect we'll see less Rocketman. We'll see. I spent a lot of games learning Rocketman. Well, you've submitted a lot of replays for it, Luffy. The devs looked at Luffy replays and said that needs a nerf. If the devs looked at one of my game breakdowns and watched a Luffy game of him crapping on somebody with Rocketman, and that got the nerf, I want devs, if you're watching this, I want to know. Just tell me on the DL. I just want to know. Maybe give Luffy a badge in game or something. I don't know. Because that would be hilarious. This dude just keeps smacking hearts with Rocketman. Let's nerf it. Exactly. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there have been games where that's happened, but it would be funny. You can thank me later for the womp womp. Yeah. All right. 60% of your games have Rocketman. I can see it. All right. So next up is Bad Sushi. One of the bigger memes among the community. This got a buff, was 1300 health, now 1400. I forgot to put health on there. I also forgot to put damage on Rocketman, but I stated it, so, you know. So, Bad Sushi. I don't know, I kind of still don't care. I've yet to see anyone use it since the patch, or I obviously saw it a couple times before, but I don't know, I just don't care about this thing at all. It does represent an enormous amount of damage, but it just seems weird. I don't know what breakpoint the extra 100 health is allowing it to hit. But I see Hakune responding here. They said all phobies are directly calculated from some fixed stat phobies. One of them is jar. I noticed that mathematically speaking, the multipliers, differences, different sums are always strangely related to some specific phobies. So I suppose they keep this comparison, and future phobies will be calculated on this way as well. Problem you cannot calculate is the combination with their ability. That seems reasonable, Hakune, and could explain a lot of this stuff. So, to clarify and try and elaborate on what Hakune is saying, because I missed this from the devs. They must have said it somewhere, and I missed it. That there are certain phobies that are your core phobies, jar being one of them. And that makes sense, because given a game like this where there's so many variables, you have to pin something down and say, okay, this is the baseline, and then we're going to work on, or work out from there, not work on, work out from there on what each of the different phobies are going to do, how they're going to work. And that's what I was alluding to earlier with the algorithm that must exist for calculating this. Knowing that jar and other phobies are part of the baseline for that is relevant, because that will drive how the scoring, quote unquote, goes for a lot of these. Now, bringing it back to Bad Sushi, clearly it was whiffing on something. I don't know. This feels like, as compared to the other ones, this is our first balance patch post-live. I don't know how many, or if there were any in beta. But I have to imagine that all of these numbers were calculated out based on that. And I don't think, because this is possible, I don't think that they change these numbers based on, like, oh, well, they developed the full disclosure phobies later, so now that has changed the equation. I don't feel like that's the case. I could be wrong, but it seems a little weird if that, like, those had to have been on the drawing board, right? They had to have been on the drawing board and had a rough idea. Like, the attractor repeller idea, okay, we're going to have a push-pull at 3 range, 1 move. That was on the board, and I don't think that's going to be heavily influencing Rocketman's attack or Bad Sushi's health. You know what I mean? So, did you notice how strangely some Phobies did perfect attack to kill a jar of some level? Just to give an example. I don't think anybody, well, I take it back. Somebody out there thought it was weird, but I don't, yeah, we talk about it all the time. So yes, that one was obvious. I just didn't realize they actually stated that is really the bigger thing I'm surprised by. That's actually why I was surprised Alastor went from 380, not 375. Do you have the number calculated out, DT? But yeah, as far as Bad Sushi goes, I don't know. I didn't see it that much before. I still don't feel like we're going to see it that much. We'll see. And so from there, we go to paddles, 600 health to 700 health. All of the changes so far kind of feel like, I don't know, they feel like adjustments in the sense of the devs want to push or punish certain things as compared to this is out of line and problematic. I don't know that the Alastor change is significant enough to really get it to stop getting played. Scritch, I assume most people were doing it when they were for the damage buff. Rocketman still does most of what it's supposed to. Bad Sushi, okay, tank a little bit more. Who cares? It's still probably not going to get used. Paddles is the weirdest one for me out of all of them, though, because I think I've seen total replays and playing paddles maybe like 3 times. Like, I forget paddles exists a lot of the time. And the weird thing is, for paddles, like, aren't you just using it primarily for the ability? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments, YouTube, or chat. Let me know if you feel differently about paddles or any of the other ones. But I just don't quite understand what the extra 100 health is doing for paddles. Like, is there a breakpoint here that suddenly it survives something so it can walk up twice? Cowbell tankier than paddles? True story. Well, actually, I don't know what cowbell is off the top of my head at level 1. Because my cowbell is 700 and change at level 8 or so, I think. I'm not doing that math on my head or on stream. That's the rule. Don't do math on stream. Which is kind of rough for a game like Phobies. Part of the reason why I play the way I do. But anyway, I don't know. Sure, we'll take the paddles buff, but I don't quite understand what this one's going for or why. It is what it is. Next one up is Minotaur. So this is another health buff. We actually saw Minotaur in a game that I played earlier on stream tonight. And I don't know. This seems very relevant because compared to paddles, paddles is not getting in the mix. Like, paddles is not getting in the mix. Or shouldn't be, realistically. But Minotaur, by definition, has to get all up on your opponent's stuff. And you want it to be surrounded by things. So the extra 100 health definitely, I mean, obviously it's a buff. It's strictly better than it was before. But it is probably more relevant, more impactful than the paddles health buff, I assume. Because I can't figure out what the scenario is with paddles. Similar to Bad Sushi, either way, you just need to get in there and do things. So this will help it scale better. Well, it's going to scale the same way, but you know, it has that extra health to ensure that it actually does what it's supposed to do. And I hope we see more Minotaur. I don't have it. I want to try it. I don't see it very often, which is something that you have to kind of think about when you want to play a game competitively or seriously. If you're not seeing all your opponents do it, now in Phobies, maybe they just don't have it. But there's probably a reason why you don't see a lot of the high-level players using certain Phobies, especially ones that have larger collections, because probably not working out for them. And if that's the case, why? Is this going to make Minotaur more playable? More playable, yes. Playable, we'll see. I like this idea. Paddles players seem to be pretty happy about it. Interesting. Honestly, switching to paddles for a moment, I haven't seen it enough to really know. I have no idea. They didn't say everything was perfectly calculated. Boss only said they have a core well-balanced, and all other phobies were kind of balanced based on that. Let's keep in mind it's not that easy when taking into consideration the range movement abilities. So we only know that a lot of numbers are multipliers, but after that, we don't know the major part about how they create them completely. Okay, cool, Kune. I mean, that's kind of what I expected, is that there's going to be, and we, not to rehash the whole thing, but you pin something down. This is what the game is going to be baseline. And then start assigning values. Well, an extra move, aka Snowball or Droney, is worth this much HP, or this much damage, or both, or whatever. That sort of thing. And then each of the abilities have a cost assignment. This is how it works in card games, too, and lots of other games. So, moving up the list, we have Charon. Goes from 1,400 health to 1,500 health. I've seen a lot of people say that Charon is still useless. I didn't think Charon was useless before. Mine just happens to be somewhat low level, so it doesn't quite have the damage output that it needs, which I think, truthfully, it still does need. So, I think Charon's playable in very, very niche situations. Namely on, what's that pink map with the ring of lava around it? Like, I've seen multiple people do that, where you use Charon to basically constantly turn off your side of the board with the lava. The problem is I think that Honey Bear does most of that better, is more flexible, and Charon is also more keys. Scoposium, thank you. Chat's always got my back. I don't know, I just don't see this causing Charon to break into an enormous amount of play unless the new maps change things. And that's the thing, is that a lot of these balance changes have to be judged in the sense that a given rotation or a new map that comes in could drastically change our opinion on a variety of different phobies. If there's a map where it's lava tiles just for days, maybe Charon really matters there because you can blaze a trail with Charon and march your army right into theirs or something. I don't know. Is that realistically how it's going to work out? Probably not. You'd probably still be better with Honey Bear, but you get the idea, is that these niche phobies need a specific scenario to make certain things happen. And there's one coming, possibly. I haven't looked that much at the new maps, or the inbound maps. The bottom line is, I've seen a lot of people still crapping on Charon. I don't 100% agree, but I kind of agree, because I think Charon needed a slight damage buff, because otherwise it's just not, it doesn't do enough. It's 5 keys, which is not an insignificant amount, to allow the rest of your team to do something. You know, here we are, chat. We're at the beauty point, and I'm sure, and I'm fine with it, that I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this. Because I originally said that I didn't think beauty was that bad. I still, or how do I want to put this? I'm still of two minds about beauty. The reason I say that is, I don't have beauty. I've only seen beauty on the other side, and basically every time I see beauty on the other side, it's 5 levels higher than my highest level phobia minimum kind of thing. So of course, yes, it kicks the crap out of me, right? I can't judge it well. I also have none of the things that we've been kind of hypothesizing and postulating that are the counters, aka like Smiley or Foul or something like that. Assuming they are the counters. Maybe they aren't. Maybe there aren't any counters to beauty. But those two seem like logical things. I don't have those, so I can't speak to whether they do anything or not. I am also of the opinion, putting aside that maybe beauty is okay, or was okay, I'm also of the opinion that beauty could have lost another 200 health going to 1,800 and gotten a damage reduction. Because it's bizarre to me, out of all of these and all the other phobies in the game, it's bizarre to me that beauty has so many stats and so many positives. Taco Suit Dog, welcome. I love that name. I mean, a frog phobia would be pretty cool, Scrungle. I'm not gonna lie. Play Tales of Iron and tell me a frog phobia would not be cool. Look it up on Steam. Trust me. Anyway, back to beauty. So, I could see it being 1800 health, and I don't know what the damage is off the top of my head. I didn't double check it, but, you know, drop it 100 damage at base level. Truthfully, I could see it getting nerfed way more than this, and it being still exceptionally playable. It has so much going for it that it feels like an incredible outlier. This is why I'm of two minds about it, because I don't have a full Phobies collection. I don't even have stuff that often is on par level-wise with Beauty to even try and fight it reasonably. So it's hard for me to say yes, with certainty anyway. Yes, this 100% needs to change because I'm fighting at a disadvantage anyway. But other side says, I don't know, this seems like there's way too much stuff. There's way too much stuff going on with Beauty that it feels silly. Is this good? Yes, absolutely. I think this is needed, and just to put it out there, there's nothing that says we won't get another balance pass if the devs feel that this is still not doing what they want. I don't know what break point or what the devs have in mind that all of a sudden now this extra 200 damage that is done to Beauty off the bat because it lost 200 health now can happen that couldn't before. I'm confused. I honestly am. I think this was needed. The community was railing about it. Don't get me wrong. The devs should absolutely not be listening to the community. And I'll talk about that in a second, but trust me. But putting the community aside for a moment, it just always felt absurd how much health that Beauty had, where it felt like it was outpacing mechanical Phobies pound for pound with health, pushing out more damage with more mobility and a positive ability on a very low cooldown. I could absolutely see Beauty getting further stat reduction and maybe even a longer cooldown on its ability. There's a lot of different things to tweak on Beauty that could work. And I'm kind of flabbergasted that we did not get more. If you were going to do something, I feel like you probably needed more. But again, that's me looking at it hot take version. Maybe a Beauty player can chime in either in the comments or in chat that, no, if you dropped it to even 1900 health, it makes it unplayable because of reasons, whatever that reason happens to be. I don't know what it would be. But it feels like Beauty still is going to show up in a lot of games, still cause a lot of frustration, still cause a lot of people to lose hair or nights of sleep or whatever. Point is that it's still very strong. Now, before we get into things that I think were missed as the patch, I just wanted to clarify a point about not listening to the community. As mentioned earlier, and I kind of talked about it a little bit already, so to rehash the point, yes, community input is relevant. But the devs have way more information. Full stop. The devs are also creating the game that they want to create. Full stop. The devs also have other priorities that simply changing the balance is not going to address, or changing the balance would negatively impact. Full stop. Bottom line, like these are axiomatic things, not just for Phobies, but literally any game you play. We've talked on many occasions, and I still haven't put up the balance video, but balance is not the top priority of any game. If it is, you're doing it wrong, basically. You can ask just about any game designer. It's very difficult for game balance, and we're talking across genres, game types, anything. Balance is not the top priority. And that's the thing, is that people will harp on it, but most people don't have enough information, knowledge, context, in order to recommend proper balance changes. Additionally, even if you get the balance change that you want, like even if they dropped it down to 1500 health and it only does 100 flat damage at every level or something, like they just cripple it. That's not good either. It's just, and it's a difficult thing for people to come to terms with, and I struggle with it myself, and I have to keep reminding myself as well. I've been around games long enough to know that this is actually the best way for things, and you have to trust what they're doing, and I do here. Would I have liked to have seen more? Yes. Is more the correct answer? Not necessarily. If they do more 2 weeks from now, is it a big I told you so? No, because they probably already know. They just want to map it out because they need thousands of people to play the games and crunch the numbers so they can get the data. We'll see. So bottom line is, just closing out, the community input is great. To a degree. You have to weight it. You have to assess it. It's not the only thing. Just because everybody's complaining about something doesn't mean that it's actually problematic. Or just because nobody's complaining about it doesn't mean that it's not problematic. Remember, they're also looking at future patches, future releases, that sort of thing. I think it's good they start with soft nerfs. Still, it has to still be good, but it's a big difference. Yeah, I think staging it and stepping into things is a reasonable approach. Iterative changes as opposed to we're just going to whiplash people back and forth. Like, my phobie's broken, my phobie's crap, my phobie's broken, my phobie's crap. Like, that's not good. That's not good. Changes in general are tough because, again, most people are not tuned into phobies. They're just going to load up and go, why is my beauty not working right? Why is my beauty smaller than I remember? And they get angry while they're pooping, and they're going to close the game. That's what happens with a lot of people who are not tuned in. So you have to be very careful about changes. And you can't be making them constantly because that turns a lot of people off. What did we miss? Because chat's already pointing it out, and honestly, I'm kind of the same opinion. I'm a little stunned that Stabby's not on here. I feel like Stabby could have done with a variety of changes, not necessarily like nerf the HP, the damage, and the reflect or something like that. You know, just something, because it feels a little too tanky. It pushes a little too much damage. And again, this isn't to infer that the devs are saying these are the only things on our radar. If you compare it to card games, there's always a watch list of, hey, we need to keep it, as the developers, we need to keep an eye on these cards because if this turns into such and such, we're going to have a problem. So Stabby probably, I'm still of the opinion Stabby needed something, needed some sort of change. I think that it's problematic for this reason. It's not necessarily broken in that, oh, well, I take over a game as soon as Stabby comes out. Like on first turn, I play Stabby, game's over, you can't do anything. Although that does happen. Early Stabbies can absolutely solidify and close out a game way earlier than people realize. However, it is so strong that it feels like the immediate go-to for virtually every player, and therefore it's going to lead to boring game states, which is above and beyond balance more important. A boring game is a dead game. Now, I'm not saying Phobies is boring. I'm not saying Phobies is going to get boring. I'm not saying that these things are causing the problem. Don't misunderstand. But if people are bored playing the game, they don't play the game. That's the problem. So if people are complaining about Stabby, which, for the record, I don't see that anywhere basically outside of my stream and Discord. I just don't see people talking about it, like, ever. Which is fascinating to me, that people... Like, I get Beauty's the big bad, it's big and it's scary, it's an 8 cost, and Stabby's like, oh, that's just a random 3 cost, who cares? I don't think people realize how many games, big or small map, it doesn't matter, get decided on like turn 3 or 4. I don't know. It seems strange to me, but I think Stabby probably needs to get a look, and there's probably another of others. Stabby's one of those phobies that are objectively too good. I think it's too good, but not, like, egregiously so. Insane damage, pull when it dies, just so annoying. Yeah, it causes so many problems. Stabby needs a nerf, I don't know how much, but just do something to it. Here's the thing, though, if you nerf Stabby, suddenly Bo Mangles is OP. They balance each other as is, and everyone gets one or the other to start. I think that Bo Mangles is more readily dealt with than Stabby, A. And B, I don't think the devs care at all about collection constraints. So I don't know if Luffy's joking around, but the increased distress levels, the fact that, you know, stress level, you could hit stress levels at any tier, it's based on your rank, which it should be, but stress levels and the stress levels locking certain things, stress levels existing, phobia levels existing, the whole pack system, the fact that people have done the math, it's going to take an enormous amount of time for a free-to-play player to collect everything, let alone max them out. All of these things lend themselves to the general thing that I beat up, which is the in-game economy. I don't think that sort of stuff plays in, and there's an argument that it shouldn't, into balancing this stuff. But I think that Bone Mangles is generally easier to deal with. It doesn't have significantly more, well, I should check the numbers, but off the top of my head, this could be wrong, I'm sure people will correct me, it doesn't feel like it has significantly more HP, and it does have a larger vulnerability, because again, poison doesn't matter, realistically. Well, if you were serious about Luffy, I don't think that's the right way to approach it. And we've talked about it before. I mean, we talked about it earlier tonight, but listening to the community is very dangerous because the community is inherently self-selecting. So if you get a ton of complaints about, I don't know, I'm switching to client here so I can pull out literally a random phobia. If you get a ton of complaints about Zappy for some reason, because somebody just hates Zappy, and therefore their like circle of people all complain about Zappy, should Zappy get nerfed? Or if people just actively refuse to play in a certain play pattern, or they're complaining because they're at Heebie-Jeebies 3 and just can't climb because the Zappies of the world are holding them down. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And even if it's the whole Discord, how many people are in Discord, the Phobies official Discord, versus how many people are on the Phobies official Facebook, versus the Phobies official Twitter, like followers, or Reddit. I don't know if they have a Reddit account. The forums, versus the whole player base. And yes, there are people who will never sign up for those things and feel the same way. There's a lot of research that goes into trying to extrapolate that sort of information. But there's no way that you can deny the fact that everyone in the Discord is self-selecting. And that's the problem, is you don't have a good representative sample to even determine if people really feel that way, let alone whether it's appropriate. And that's the thing. Those were the major topics for this evening. So we're going to close out this particular news flash. We'll jump back into the stream, which, by the way, if you want to see some live Phobies action in other games, hit up the Random Thoughts stream, RTChompGG over on Twitch, or hit up the Random Thoughts Discord in the description of this video. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and Black Lives Matter.